Wave 6 of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass has finally been released, so it's finally time to rank every single track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe from worst to best. Now there are 96 of these bad boys to rank, so let's not waste any time and jump straight in with the worst track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Toad Circuit. While I believe Toad Circuit is the worst track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I don't necessarily think it's a bad track. It's one of the most simple tracks in the game and it's a very short track as well. This is the very first track in the 3DS game Mario Kart 7, so it makes sense why it is a very simple and basic course. The aim of the track in that game is to teach you the basic mechanics of Mario Kart 7, such as the introduction of the glider. Why Nintendo decided to include this basic track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe baffles me, as they could have picked a much better track than Toad Circuit. Tokyo Blur. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has a total of 14 different tour tracks based on real life cities. That is a lot of real life city tracks, and out of all of those 14, I consider Tokyo Blur to be the worst real-life city tour track. Tokyo Blur is, to be honest, a pretty boring course. I do like that most of the tour city courses have a different layout for each lap, which is supposed to make each lap feel unique. However, since there is nothing interesting within Tokyo Blur, each lap just blends together for this course and none of them feel unique. In my opinion, Tokyo should have been represented much better in this track. The good tour city tracks make me want to go visit the city in real life, but Tokyo Blur simply makes me want to do the opposite. Sunset Wilds. If I was ranking the original Sunset Wilds track from Mario Kart GBA, then this would easily be a 5-star track. So why has this version of the track been given a 1-star rating? Well, oh boy, Nintendo goofed real bad here. There are so many elements of this track which originally made this track feel so special that have either been stripped back or completely taken away. The actual layout of the track has been simplified, with lots of the turns from the original course being removed, which makes this new version a much shorter track. The teepees containing Shy Guys that were originally a hazard on the track have now been moved off the road, making them no longer a hazard. And this track's unique gimmick, which made this track stand out from the others, is that the skybox would change each lap as you were racing, meaning you would start the race at sunset and when you finish the course, it would end up being nighttime. This was a really cool feature, but unfortunately, this updated version of the course has removed the sunset. Why? This unfortunately won't be the last time we see a retro track being downgraded heavily within the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass, but Sunset Wilds is by far the worst example of a track being brought back well in this game. Mario Circuit 3. Moving on to the 2-star tracks. Yeah, there are only 3 out of the 96 tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that I thought deserved a 1-star rating. Also, out of all those 96 tracks, for some reason, we have 4 Mario Circuit tracks in this game. Like Nintendo, we didn't need 4 Mario Circuit tracks in one Mario Kart game. 1 or 2 is enough, alright? As for Mario Circuit 3, I think it's the weakest Mario Circuit track in this game. It's a very faithful remake of the original version of the track, which isn't a bad thing, but considering this was originally an SNES course, they could have spiced up the track a little more to make it a bit more interesting. Mario Circuit GBA. This is the same simple track you remember from the Game Boy Advance. There is, however, a new anti-gravity section that has been added to the course, which keeps things a little more interesting. Merry Mountain. Call me a Grinch, but I'm not the biggest fan of this course. The track is essentially one big loop with a lot of verticality to it. It can still be fun to play on this map, as I like the shortcut you can take up the train tracks, and I enjoy racing down the snow mountain towards the end of a lap. My biggest problem with this track, though, is that since this is clearly a Christmas themed map, it makes this a course I would only like to race on during December time. Racing on this course at any other time just feels a bit odd to me, and it doesn't feel quite right, which is why this track is ranked so low in this list. Cheeseland. Cheeseland is unfortunately another track that I much preferred on the GBA. While the Mario Kart 8 version of the track does take the general layout of the course and translate it into something interesting, there are many aspects of the track that have been heavily downgraded in this version. First, all the space elements from the original GBA version have been stripped out, which makes this new version of the track feel like a generic desert track with cheese. The mice enemies from the original GBA track are also not present in the new version of the track. Cheese holes have been added onto the road, which you can drive over and perform tricks on, which sounds cool, but I find that the holes make driving on this course feel more shaky, and I just prefer to try and avoid the holes. Despite all the changes that have been made to this course, which I don't like, Cheeseland is still an okay track to race on in Mario Kart 8, I just much prefer the original GBA version. Sherbet Land. Sherbet Land was originally a track I disliked heavily back on GameCube, but here in Mario Kart 8, I think it's alright. The track feels much nicer to race on in Mario Kart 8, and I really like the added underwater routes you can take on this course. Sherbet Land is nowhere near some of the best snow maps in the series, but it's still a solid track. New York Minute. New York Minute certainly isn't a bad track, but my problem with it is that it is a very forgettable track. Since there are a total of 14 tour city tracks in this game, unfortunately a lot of the city tracks don't really stand out from one another. I do still enjoy racing on New York Minute when it is chosen, and I like the final lap where you can go through the parking garage, but this track needed a lot more interesting elements to make it more memorable. Bone Dry Ruins. The Mario Kart series seems to have been cursed when it comes to its desert maps. Most of the time when Nintendo tries to make a good desert track, it sucks. Unfortunately, Bone Dry Ruins has met the same fate. On paper, this should be a really good track as it's got some really good features like cool dinosaur fossils, split pathways, dry bones roaming around on the course, and the sunset backdrop is gorgeous. But like when actually racing on this course, it just feels kinda dull, and it's just not a very fun course to play on. Dry Desert. Oh look, it's another desert theme track ranked really low on this list. I did originally quite like this one back on GameCube, but here on Switch, I think it's kind of mid. This is a very generic standard looking desert themed track. There's a couple of pokey enemies on the road you need to avoid and a huge sand pit in the middle of the course you don't want to fall into. I do enjoy using mushrooms on this course to take lots of shortcuts, and I like the new underwater section of this track where you get to race through an oasis. That's quite fun. I don't like the fact that the tornadoes have been stripped out of this version of the track though, and that giant piranha plant that would eat you if you fell into the sand pit has also vanished. If you fall into the sand pit now, you just sink into the sand. I would much rather watch my opponents get eaten by a big piranha plant. Overall, it's not a bad desert track, but it's one I much preferred on GameCube. And I promise we will get onto talking about a desert track I like in this game at some point, alright? Bangkok Rush. Bangkok Rush has the same problem as New York Minute, where there are just too many city tour tracks in the game that this one feels forgettable. As I'm writing the script for the video right now, I'm struggling to think of anything that really sticks out from my mind about this course. I mean, racing alongside the boats is kind of cool, and bouncing on top of the market stalls is pretty fun, but to be honest, I find this track to be mid. Los Angeles Laps. Alright, so let's play a quick game. When I say to you Los Angeles, what's the first thing you think of? You got something? So you might have said something like Hollywood attractions, beaches, theme parks, TV, movie, or music industries. Stuff like that. Nintendo, however, decided for some reason to represent Los Angeles by incorporating an oil rig into the track. Why would you choose to do that? Nintendo really did do Los Angeles dirty in this track. There are at least some beach sections on the course which are pretty fun to race on, although I actively dislike this half pipe you can find on the beach. Take a look at this clip from when I was playing this track with my partner. Now to be fair, it's not the best angle to approach the half pipe from, but like what the f***? Complaints aside though, this track is still fine. It's at least a bit more memorable than some of the other city tour tracks, but Los Angeles Laps doesn't do anything special and it's not really memorable for the right reasons. Water Park. This track has you racing through an amusement park, going around a huge loop in this anti-gravity section, and driving through many underwater sections. You also at one point get to glide underneath a Ferris wheel, which is my favourite part of this course. While this is a gorgeous track to race on, unfortunately this is one of the few base Mario Kart 8 maps that I end up completely forgetting about. This is probably because the track doesn't really pose any sort of challenge, so my brain will just switch itself off half the time when playing on this course. Certainly not a bad track, but it's not one of my favourites. Sky Garden. Like Sunset Wilds and Cheeseland, Sky Garden used to be one of my favourite tracks within Mario Kart Super Circuit. It's actually the track I placed at the #1 spot in my Mario Kart Super Circuit video. Unfortunately though, this is another GBA track that has not been brought over well into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The layout of this course has been heavily simplified, with lots of the turns being removed, which makes the Mario Kart 8 version of the track a lot more basic, and it makes this course super short too. I also find it strange that there are no anti-gravity sections on this course, like this map would have been basically perfect for it. The actual course itself does at least look nice, and the music is pretty good too, but this track is still a downgrade compared to the original GBA version. Snowland. Snowland is a GBA track that I actually prefer in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It still remains as quite a simple snow map, and due to its simplicity, I tend to forget about its existence a lot, but it's still a fun track to race on. Also, the baby penguins are cute. Sky High Sundae, the 3-star tracks. Yo, it's that track that looks like a Fall Guys map. This track has a great theme. I love the saturated colours used here, and the course design is pretty interesting with lots of verticality. I do, however, have some problems with this track that stop it from being ranked higher up in this list. My main issue here is that racing on this track feels incredibly really floaty. It's most noticeable when going off the jumps, but there are a lot of jumps on this course, so it feels like you spend most of the time floating than actually racing on this track. I also don't like these rails that look like a hazard, but when you bump into them, you end up spinning to gain a speed boost. That might sound really nitpicky, but personally, those rails really bother me and they seem unfinished. Vancouver Velocity. This is the first city tour track on this list that I think is pretty solid. This course has you driving through the streets of Vancouver, going through a snowy Canadian forest, and you even go on an ice rink at some points, which is pretty rad. This track does a lot of things right, good course design, fun track to race on, and the music is pretty banging too, but I personally don't think this track does enough for it to stand out from the rest of the tour city tracks. Donut Plains 3. This is an SNES track that has been translated into Mario Kart 8 very well. This faithful remake of the course doesn't do anything special, like it's still a relatively flat course, the layout remains pretty much the same as it did back on the SNES, but damn, I'm impressed with how good they made this map look. You can also drive in the water now, which is a nice new addition. Mario Kart Stadium, the very first track in Mario Kart 8, and because of that, this is a very basic course. With this being the first track in the game, this course's job is to give you a feel of how the game controls and to essentially teach you the game's core mechanics, and Mario Kart Stadium does a very good job at doing both of those things. This course has a very simple layout to let players get used to the driving and drifting, and there is an anti-gravity section here which shows off this game's main gimmick. So even though this is a basic track, it serves its purpose, and it's a good introduction from what to expect from the rest of the tracks in the game. Berlin Byways. Visually, Berlin Byways is one of the best looking tour city tracks. I especially love the Nintendo themed street art you can find dotted around this course. In terms of the track layout though, this track is a mess. Out of all the city tour tracks, Berlin Byways feels like it has the most forced routing, and some of the turns feel like they come out of nowhere. It's still an enjoyable tour track to race on, and if you live in Berlin, I'm sure you will agree that your home city was represented well here. Amsterdam Drift, a pretty solid city track. You get to drive through the streets of Amsterdam, drive through some flower gardens, and I like the sections where you get to drive underwater into the canal. I'm not gonna lie, but I was low-key hoping that the red light district would get represented in some way on this track. Unfortunately, it didn't quite make it into the track for understandable reasons, but I like to think that the red tulip field could be a subtle reference to it. Boo Lake, an extremely short and simple track, but I still think it's been updated nicely for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The newly added underwater section is a welcome new addition, and I'm glad some elevation has been added to the track too. Twisted Mansion. I'm very mixed on this track. This is a track where you race around a haunted mansion filled with booze, books, and water for some reason. More on that in a bit. There's a lot I like about this course and things which I'm not so keen on. Starting with the things I like, racing through the library section is pretty cool. There's a gliding section which you can take to the upper floor of the mansion, and I like the statues which try to flatten you with their hammers. Also, the dark and gloomy mood lighting along with the chilling music and night sky helps capture the feeling of racing around a haunted mansion very well. One of the things I don't like about this course though is the multiple pathways you can take. This is usually a feature of a track I enjoy, however here in Twisted Mansion, when presented with the option of going down either path A or B, the choice doesn't even matter as both paths are almost identical to each other. So what's the point of having these multiple pathways? Another big issue I have with this track is the underwater and anti-gravity section, as this whole part of the track feels incredibly out of place. How have these boos managed to flood their own mansion? It feels like the underwater and anti-grav section was only included as an excuse to have an anti-gravity section present on this map, since this is Mario Kart 8's core gimmick. So yeah, this is a course I'm left with mixed feelings on. I think if the underwater section was replaced by something else entirely, and some of the multiple pathways were adjusted to being only one single path, then we could have potentially had a banger of a haunted mansion track. Mario Circuit, the third of the 4 Mario Circuit tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and this one is pretty good. This map heavily leans into Mario Kart 8's core gimmick, since nearly the whole track is anti-gravity. Like the rest of the Mario Circuit tracks in the game, this track is pretty simple and there's nothing special here, but what's cool about this map is that the course layout resembles a giant 8, which is very fitting for Mario Kart 8. Mario Circuit DS, the 4th and final Mario Circuit track within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Thank God. But since this is the last Mario Circuit track I'm talking about, then that means I think this is the best one in the game. This is still a very simple Mario Circuit track taken from the DS, but there's a new forest section that has been added to this course which looks fantastic, and it helps switch up the theming of the course when racing through different environments. I like the piranha plants that shoot fire at you on this course too, and the wiggler you come across on the 3rd lap. It's still a pretty basic course, but I've got a soft spot for it, and out of the 4 Mario Circuit tracks in the game, I think think this is the best one. Yoshi Valley, a pretty unique course from the roster of tracks within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, as Yoshi's Valley by far has the most alternative paths compared to any other track. You may find yourself one lap taking a route through a tunnel, and the next lap you might find a cannon to shoot yourself out of. I do tend to only stick to one main route when racing on this track though, which is the path where you take a left at the beginning and then go over this tight wooden bridge. This feels like the fastest way to go, so I always take this route and ignore the other pathways. This is still a very good track though, whether you like to go on different routes each lap or stick to the same route for the entirety of the race. Toad's Turnpike. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has 3 tracks featuring big vehicles on the road which act as hazards. This is editing, Ollie. I've realised there is actually 4 tracks featuring traffic on the roads, since you can find big cars and trucks on Berlin Byways. Berlin Byways only has them on the road for a small portion of the race though, while the other 3 have them for the entirety of the race. Just wanted to clear that up so people don't come for my head. The big vehicles on the course help make these 3 courses more enjoyable to race on, and they make them feel more unique too. Toad's Turnpike is one of my favourite courses from the N64, but it is the weakest of the 3 big vehicle tracks within Mario Kart 8 due to the very simple layout of the track, as you essentially just race around 2 big circles for each lap. There are some new anti-gravity sections added to the course though, where you can race up some railings on the side of the road and get a lot of speed boosts, which does help mix things up a bit. Athens Dash. To me, Athens Dash feels like the first city tour track that actually stands out from all the 14 city tracks in the game. The main reason for this is the unique architecture, as instead of using generic looking buildings, destroyed ruins are instead the primary focus here. There is also a lot of elevation and verticality to this course, which is another good thing as most tour city tracks are pretty flat. Athens Dash also has plenty of shortcuts you can find and take on this course too. Sweet Sweet Canyon. This is another dessert themed track in the game, and I gotta talk about my old flatmate Storm when talking about Sweet Sweet Canyon. She absolutely loves this track, and it's one of her favourites in this game. Storm mainly likes it because it's dessert themed, and she does have a massive sweet tooth for desserts. And to be fair, the theming of this course is one of the reasons I like this track too. I also love shooting myself out the cannon at the start of the lap onto the giant cake, choosing which split pathway to go on in the middle of the track, and if I've got a mushroom I can take a cheeky shortcut under a giant donut, which is always fun to do. Sweet Sweet Canyon is a track both me and Storm really enjoy. Neo Bowser City. In my opinion, this track feels like one of the hardest tracks to race on within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. There are a lot of sharp turns on this course, and most of the turns don't have any railings on them, so if you aren't careful, it is very easy to fall off the track. Also, to make things harder, it's raining on this course, which is a nice feature for this map's aesthetic. However, it means the roads on this track are slippery, making these tight turns even harder to pull off. Difficulty wise, I would say this track is up there with some of the rainbow roads in this game, especially when racing on 200cc. Good luck with that. I do like the Neon City vibe this track goes for though, and how the bright neon lights contrast the dark stormy weather taking place. It really makes those neon lights pop when racing on this course. Super Bull Pissway. Wait a sec, which one of my brothers have tampered with my script? Super Bell Subway. This course has you racing in some very narrow tunnels while avoiding lots of trains coming directly towards you on railway tracks. It's very cramped within the tunnel, so it can be a little tricky to avoid getting hit by these trains, but you can take an upper path to get above the trains, and even potentially ride on top of the trains, which is a very cool thing to do. I really like the concept for this course, and this is a pretty cool idea for a Mario Kart track. Wario Stadium. This was a stadium map that was okay back on DS, but some very cool new features have been added to the Switch version of this course. There is a new anti-gravity section where the platforms on the course are raised, and there's also a new underwater section where part of the stadium has been flooded. This is still not my favourite stadium course in the series, but the new additions to the course make this track a lot more fun than it used to be. London Loop. I may be a little biased having London Loop higher up on this list than other tour tracks, since I come from the UK, but I think London Loop is alright. I like the course layout a lot better than some of the other tour city tracks, and I also think that elements of London have been incorporated very well into this track. You got Big Ben in the background, the red double-decker buses, and your mother on a lead. There definitely could have been some more interesting features added to this track, but for what it is, I think it's still decent. It is a shame though that we don't have any Goombas or Shy Guys on this course running around with knives trying to shank all of the toads. If that was incorporated into this course, then it would be a much more accurate representation of London, and I would have easily given this track a 5-star rating and put it at the top of this list. Shroom Shroom Ridge. This is the second of the 3 tracks featuring the big vehicles on the road. Speaking of those roads, they are very thin, which makes it more difficult to avoid the big moving vehicles. And this course has a lot of windy turns, which makes this a fun course to drift around on. There are also 2 fun shortcuts you can take on this course. One where you cut across the grass and jump off a ramp, and another where you can travel across an air current if you approach it from the right angle and have the right speed. I like the tunnel section too, where your car's lights will turn on when travelling through it. It's a very small detail, I know, but it's a very cool thing to see. Rome Avanti. It's a bit difficult to rank the tracks in Wave 6 of the DLC because of recency bias, but I think I quite like this city track. The art direction is very nice. I like that the race takes place at night time, since most of the other city tracks take place during the daytime, and this is just a very pleasant course to race on. The highlights of this track for me are going through the Colosseum with the chain chomps, and this section where you can hit a ramp and glide through some rings with fuzzy enemies on them. Also, is it just me, or do these small blue buildings remind you of the TARDIS from Doctor Who? Choco Mountain. I wasn't really a fan of this track back on the N64, but I do quite like this new version. The environment looks a lot less dull and muddy compared to the original track, and the fog has been heavily reduced, which makes this track look a lot nicer. The new version also feels a lot smoother to race on, with there being less bumps in the road, and it feels less dangerous compared to the original track. The road you race on feels a lot wider, and hazards on this course such as the falling boulders feel like less of a threat. These are all changes that I like, and it makes me enjoy Choco Mountain a lot more than I used to. Royal Raceway. Another N64 track updated well for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The big jump section from the original track has been turned into a glider section, which is a very cool change to this course. I also like the small details on this course, like the floating hot air balloons, the toads on the lake with swan-shaped boats, and this poster advertising women's equality. I like women. And men, to be fair. Paris Promenade. This was the first track which kicked off the Mario Kart Booster Course pass, and personally, it's a track I really enjoy. This course has you driving through the streets of Paris and racing under the Eiffel Tower. Most of the other Tour City tracks have you doing 3 completely unique laps, but in Paris Promenade, the first 2 laps are the same, but for the final lap, you race around the track in reverse, which is a really cool feature that makes this map stand out, and there's only one other track that has this feature in Mario Kart 8. The setting with the nice orangey pink sky and the music also helps to make this feel like a heartwarming and cozy map to race on. Cloudtop Cruise. Taking place in the sky, there is a lot going on within Cloudtop Cruise. You start by racing on top of some clouds, then you land on a tiny airship, get shot out of a cannon into a thunderstorm area where you have to dodge lightning while taking the boost panels, and then finally you fly out of the thunderstorm onto this beanstalk section. It's a very fast-paced map where you traverse through each section very quickly, perhaps a little too quickly for my liking. Rainbow Road. Oh boy, I've got some thoughts about this track. Every Mario Kart game since the very beginning has a Rainbow Road track. Rainbow Road is known to be one of the hardest, most challenging, but also one of the most fun courses within any Mario Kart game. So what do I think about Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road track? Well, I think it's the worst Rainbow Road in the entire series. Look, it's not a bad track, but when you compare this Rainbow Road to the others within the series, you can see that there are key components this Rainbow Road lacks. Those components are challenge, creativity, and funness. Is that a word? I don't even know. Starting with challenge, this Rainbow Road, even on 200cc, is a cakewalk. I very rarely fall off the track, and this is not a Rainbow Road that is going to test your Mario Kart skills, like how the SNES or the Wii Rainbow Road does. Now, not every Rainbow Road needs to be ridiculously difficult or challenging, as the N64 and 3DS Rainbow Road don't give you much of a challenge, but what makes up for that is the creativity poured into those maps. Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road unfortunately doesn't feel nearly as creative when compared to previous entries in the series. There are aspects of this course I do like, such as the space colony theming, this part of the track with the conveyor belts, and I like the split pathways you can take on this course, but I feel like so much more could have been done here. It feels like Nintendo leaned too much into making a space colony course rather than an imaginative Rainbow Road track, and because this Rainbow Road lacks challenge and creativity, it means I just don't find this course to be as fun as the other Rainbow Road tracks. If we were to judge this as a standard Mario Kart course, then I think it's still pretty good, but when you judge it as a Rainbow Road track, it does not match the quality of any of the other Rainbow Roads in the series. The actual rainbow doesn't even look that rainbowy to me. Like, come on Nintendo, you could have made the colours of the actual rainbow pop a little bit more. Thwomp Ruins. The 4-star tracks. We haven't even reached the halfway point of this list, and we have already made it to the 4-star tracks, which is a very very strong indication on just how good the roster of tracks is within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Thwomp Ruins is a fantastic track. You race along the ruins in a very pretty looking map while also going into dark tunnels, driving up the walls, and there's plenty of gliding sections scattered around the course which allows you to fly over the ruins. The ruins also have traps for you to avoid as well as many thwomps, which is very fitting for this course. There's plenty of shortcuts for you to find and take on this track as well, which just makes this course even more fun. Daisy Circuit. I know that a lot of people completely adore this track from the Wii. This track is quite different compared to your typical circuit tracks, since Daisy Circuit takes place at sunset in a small cute town. This map has that nice warm cozy orange feel to it, and I love the Daisy and Luigi statues on the fountains. Like most of the other circuit tracks, it's got a pretty simple layout, but what carries this track is its theming, and it's why so many people love Daisy's Circuit. Yoshi Circuit. This track's unique selling point is that its layout is shaped like a giant Yoshi, and at the time for the GameCube, I think this was a very creative and clever idea for a Mario Kart track. Unfortunately, I feel like the novelty of the track has worn off since it was first introduced back on the GameCube. A shortcut from the GameCube version was also removed within this new Switch version of the track too, but Yoshi Circuit still remains as one of my favourite circuit maps within the Mario Kart series. Dragon Driftway. This track is all about my Dragon Boy Gobblegut, who was that dragon boss in Super Mario Galaxy 2. You begin the track by entering the dragon's mouth, and then you race your way across the dragon's body on a very windy course. Accompanied with some Chinese architecture and a map layout which looks like your dad's cock, this is a great track. Ice Outpost. I'm not quite sure what the general consensus is for this track, but I like this one a lot. The road for this track is split into two, leaving you with a choice of taking either the yellow or green path. Both of these roads are pretty similar since most of the time the paths are connected, except for when the elevations of the paths differ from each other. The paths do still manage to feel different enough though, as switching from the yellow to the green path or vice versa is a pretty fun thing to do on this course. Aside from the two split roads, this track also has some good shortcuts, a cool gliding section, and a pretty cool snowy theme. It makes me feel like I'm racing in the Arctic or Antarctica. Toad Harbor. To be completely honest, Toad's Harbor was a map I didn't like at all originally, but then I played it more and some more, and then even more, and now I completely love it. You race through a small town filled with toads located right by the sea. You drive through or on top of a local market, avoid the cable cars around the town. You even get to drive up the walls at some point. But my favourite part of this track is where you race down this huge hill while chaining together boost pads to reach maximum speed. You can even hit a ramp and try to bounce off one of the cable cars, which is a fun thing to do. I think a lot of people would want to see this track return again within future Mario Kart entries. Rainbow Road SNES. Ranking this Rainbow Road above the Mario Kart 8 Rainbow Road could be controversial, but I don't care man, this is my list, and even though this is a pretty simple course, I still have fun with it. This is a very faithful remake of the SNES Rainbow Road track, and while not much has been done to spice up the track, this is probably the most difficult Rainbow Road within Mario Kart 8. There are 0 side railings on this course, and a lot of sharp 90-degree turns, so it's very easy to fall off this course if you aren't careful, especially on 200cc. There are some rainbow thwomps on the track you will need to avoid, and there's a couple of ramps which allow you to take a cheeky shortcut if you've got those good Mario Kart 8 skills. Apart from that though, that's basically it. So even though this is the simplest Rainbow Road, the difficulty of the course remains intact, and I still enjoy this course here in Mario Kart 8. Waluigi Stadium. One of the best looking tracks that have come out from the Booster Course Pass, hands down. That mud texture especially that has been used for this course here looks really good. Some alternative pathways have also been added above the track which you can take from using the half pipes, which is a great new addition to this course. Cheap Beach. I've got a soft spot for this map as I really enjoy Cheap Beach. You drive through the docks, a sandy beach, a tropical forest, and you can even dive into the water to say hello to some of the Cheeps and crabs. It's a pretty easy course that's not going to test you, but it's an absolutely gorgeous track to race on. Dolphin Shoals. Here is another really pretty track that looks incredible on the Switch. This track has you primarily racing underwater with the dolphins. There's a cool pipe section you will come across under the water too, where the path splits off into multiple different directions, and you get to ride a huge giant red eel on this course too. I also love how when you exit the water, the music properly kicks in and you hear that beautiful saxophone playing in the background. I want to marry that saxophone player. Madrid Drive. The final city tour track introduced in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and thankfully this city map is a banger. When you play on this course, you will end up racing through a plaza with a wiggler roaming around the place, going down a conveyor belt into a railway station filled with plants, entering a museum filled filled with paintings of Nintendo artwork. I also love this painting at the back, which has this piranha plant poking out from it. Racing through a cute marketplace filled with food, gliding across a park where you can hit some water geysers, and finally you race through a football stadium where Goombas will be passing balls to each other in giant clown shoes. That's a lot of different things happening in one race, and it's why I love this track. Also, the soundtrack for this course is phenomenal. I love all the Spanish guitars here. It's such a vibe. There's just so much to like about this course, and this is easily one of the best city tracks within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Riverside Park. A pretty short and simple track, but it's very nice and pleasant to race on. This is one of the nicer looking tracks to come out of the Booster Course Pass, and that cave section of the track where you jump out of the waterfall is also really cool. I would have ranked this as a 3-star track due to its simplicity. However, the walking piranha plants immediately turn this course from a mediocre one into a fantastic one. These majestic looking boys are hilarious to witness, and I love them. Best feature of this course. Rock Mountain. I tried to be American, leave me alone. The same good old track you remember from the 3DS. I love all the gliding sections on this map and how you can catch the updraft from the pipes to glide even higher and further. There are a lot of good opportunities for taking shortcuts on this track too, which is always fun. Piranha Plant Cove. This is a tour track that takes place at an underwater temple, and it's one of those courses which has 3 entirely unique laps. Most of the time is spent underwater racing around the temple ruins and going through underwater caves, but you will also at points emerge from the water to race across the temple and on an island filled with piranha plants. Obviously I really like the piranha plants on this course, but I also really like that you will come across the eel from Mario 64 while racing underwater, and the music here is pretty good too. This track hasn't yet stood the testament of time, so my opinion on this course here could change in the future, but right now this is a track I really enjoy. DK Jungle. This track feels like it has been ripped right from Donkey Kong Country. You traverse through some thick jungles, drive past some waterfalls, and you even enter a golden temple where you encounter a huge golden banana. Lots of Donkey Kong enemies are on this course too, like these funky looking boys, and there's a gliding section on the map which features these screaming pillars. There are a lot of things going on here, and I'm really happy Nintendo made a track inspired by the Donkey Kong Country series, as this is just an incredible track to race on. Shy Guy Falls. This is a really fun track. This race takes place on a cliffside and has you driving up a freaking waterfall. How cool is that? You also get to race down a waterfall and then hit a ramp and enter a gliding section where you can fly over the canyons. Good stuff. The rest of the course is pretty solid too, and I love all the Shy Guys that are scattered around the map. Sydney Sprint. Now this is a tour city track that goes hard. We have 3 unique laps again, but this time instead of each lap blending into each other, all 3 laps actually feel different from one another. In the first lap you drive through an opera house, drive past an amusement park, and go across a big bridge. The second lap has you driving through a ferry, going under the big bridge, drifting through a park, and you finish the lap by driving through a grassy area and then by gliding between the shells of the opera house. And then the third lap is the same as the first lap, but just in reverse. There are so many different elements that make up this course, and these elements come together so well to make every lap feel unique and memorable. And they make this one of the most fun city tour tracks to race on. I also have to give credit to the soundtrack as it goes hard for this course, especially the saxophone. Moo Moo Meadows. Now I do have to confess that Mario Kart Wii was the Mario Kart game I grew up with, so I've got a lot of nostalgia for these Wii tracks. Don't judge me, okay? I just like the Wii tracks. Moo Moo Meadows is a track that takes place on a farm with a bunch of cows. The cows on later laps will start to move onto the road, making them a hazard you have to avoid. It's quite a simple and easy track honestly, but if you have lots of nostalgia for the Wii tracks like I do, then I expect, like me, you will also have a big soft spot for this track too, mainly because of the cows. It's also a better track to play on Switch though, as there's a new gliding section on the course which is a welcome new addition. Kalimari Desert. Finally, a good desert track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This was already a pretty enjoyable track back on the N64, and it is even better here on the Switch. One big change made here is that on the second lap you actually drive on the train tracks, which is a really cool idea. That one single change has taken Kalimari Desert from being a good track to a great track. A really fun course to race on, and it's our highest desert themed track on this list. Wario's Gold Mine. I remember finding this to be one of the most difficult tracks back on Mario Kart Wii. Wario's Gold Mine has you racing on one long railway track, which is very thin and has very few side railings, which makes it quite easy to fall off this course if you aren't careful. This does feel like a much easier course compared to the Wii version, probably because the Switch's controls are not scuffed like the Wii's, but this still remains as a really fun track. There is also a new subtle anti-gravity section on this course, which allows you to collide with the minecarts, which gives you you a speed boost. Originally, if you bumped into a minecart, you would come to a grinding halt, which isn't very fun, so I'm happy this new anti-gravity section was added. Ooh, voice crack. Moonview Highway. I was slightly worried when it was announced this Wii track was being brought back into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, since it could have lost its unique identity as a city track and instead be blended in with the rest of the city tracks from Tour. Thankfully, while I feel like this course has lost a bit of its uniqueness, it definitely does not blend into the rest of the City Tour tracks. The main reason for that is because this is another one of the tracks, and the last track in this game, that features the big vehicles acting as oncoming traffic, which you need to avoid. I've also got heavy nostalgia for this Wii track, so that also goes in this track's favour. Grumble Volcano, a track where you race around an island that is surrounded by lava, which has an angry volcano on it. What I really like about this track is how chunks of the course will break away during the race, making later laps much more difficult than the previous ones. There are also fiery enemies on the track you will need to avoid when taking some sharp turns, and the volcano will spit rocks at you when on this course too. That volcano is certainly angry. Music Park. As you have probably already guessed, this is a music themed course, which is filled with all kinds of wonderful instruments. There are pianos, trumpets, drums, xylophones, and so much more. What's cool and unique about this track is that any action you perform plays a sound effect to accompany the background music. For example, drifting on the piano keys trigger piano notes to be played out, and bouncing on the drum creates a sound too. This track also has a gliding section where you have to fly past some giant black notes, and you will find some piranha plants jamming out to the music on this course too. Music Park has to be one of the most creative courses in the game, and I love it. Piranha Plant Slide. So I'm legally obliged to have this course high up on this list, otherwise my partner will end up pointing a gun at my head since she loves piranha plants. But thankfully, this is a very good track. You start by entering a giant pipe and are greeted by a huge piranha plant. You continue driving your way through this underground tunnel until you find a water slide which takes you to an underwater area, which has another piranha plant in it. To finish off the lap, you will then burst out of the water flying through a mini castle, then finally avoid some Goombas which will take you right back to the starting line. There's a lot going on during this course, it's another very creative track, and it's just a lot of fun to race on. Wild Woods. Now there are a lot of gorgeous looking maps in Mario Kart 8, but I've got to say Wild Woods has to be a contender for the most beautiful track in the game. That part of the track where you glide through the Shy Guys village looks stunning. You race through a giant forest, go down a tree trunk water slide, and trick off some moving leaves with ramps on them. Fantastic stuff. Bowser's Castle. Now this is a big one. Like how every Mario Kart game has its Rainbow Road, every Mario Kart game has at least one form of Bowser's Castle. These tend to be pretty challenging courses, although some of them are a lot better than others. So how do I feel about Mario Kart 8's take on Bowser's Castle? Well, I think it's great. It's got fire bars, lasers, wrecking balls, rolling rocks, and a giant Bowser who's trying to punch the living shit out of you. It's got all the elements you would expect from a great Bowser Castle track. I'm not quite sure if it's my favourite Bowser Castle track, but I would say it's at the moment sitting comfortably within my top 5 Bowser Castle tracks. Bowser's Castle 3. I'm very surprised that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe ended up with only 2 Bowser Castle tracks in the game, since there are 5 Rainbow Roads in this game and 4 Mario Circuit tracks. Both Bowser Castle tracks are very good in this game though, and Bowser Castle 3, oh wow. This was originally an SNES track, but it's got a huge upgrade. Visually this map looks incredible, with there being fireballs and geysers spitting out from across all the lava, making this feel like a dangerous course. Track layout wise, loads of elevation has been added to the course, which is great as all the SNES tracks were originally just all flat, and there's even been an anti-gravity section incorporated into the track. The music for this track is also sick, and it makes racing on this course feel so much more intense. This Bowser Castle track is incredible, and I'm really impressed with how they took this SNES track and made it this good in Mario Kart 8. Mute City. So Mario Kart 8 has 2 tracks based on F-Zero, and both of them are really good. Mute City is a fast-paced track that is all about speed. Speed boosts are all over the course, and the whole track is an anti-grav as well, so bumping into any other races is just going to give you an additional speed boost. The track also features recharge pads that distribute coins to you when you drive over them. This track captures the feeling of playing an F-Zero game perfectly, especially when playing this track on 200cc. I was very close to giving this track a 5-star rating, but like I said earlier, there are 2 F-Zero tracks in the game, and I think that second track, which we're going to talk about later, is just a little bit better. Mushroom Gorge, a track I was really happy to see make a return in the Booster Course Pass DLC. This track's unique mechanics are of course its mushrooms, and you will be bouncing on a lot of these as you are racing. This version of Mushroom Gorge also has the blue mushroom, which which was in the 3DS version of the track, and this blue mushroom acts as a glide ramp. I was skeptical about the addition of this blue mushroom at first, but after a couple of races on this course, I landed on quite enjoying having this blue mushroom in this version of the course. Koopa Cape. If we were ranking the Wii version of this track, then I would happily give this track a 5-star rating, put this within the top 10 of this list, and call it a day. So what happened to this track in Mario Kart 8? Well, to start with, the water pipe section of this track has been completely ruined. The flowing stream of water, which would boost your speed if you went in it, has been completely removed, and the electrical rotating bars, which acted as a fun hazard, have also been removed. Now, to be fair, these were changes made in the Mario Kart 7 version of this track, since they removed these features from the course to instead turn the underwater pipe section into a section where you actually drive submerged within water. Not a change that I thought was good at the time, and was hoping that this new Mario Kart 8 version of the track would reintroduce the features of the track that made it so great on the Wii. However, the opposite has happened, and this track has somehow been made even worse within Mario Kart 8. Two things, one big issue and one not so big. Let's start with the bigger one. What is going on with the camera here? The camera, when going on any of the half pipes on this course, I swear is always pointing towards the worst angle imaginable. This is a problem most of the courses with half pipes within Mario Kart 8 suffer from, but it's particularly bad here in Koopa Cape. Also, the camera when driving into and within the underwater section is terrible. Like, you would struggle racing on this section of the course if you weren't familiar with this track's layout. And the other minor change to this course which I don't like is that an additional half pipe was also added within the underwater pipe section. That just feels so incredibly janky to use. I did at one point though somehow manage to gain so much height from going off the half pipe that I flew out of the water, which felt pretty good to pull off. I know I've been very harsh on this course, but I'm being so harsh because I believe this course should have received much better treatment. I do still really enjoy Koopa Cape here on Mario Kart 8 since I've ranked this track still pretty high up on my list, but sadly on Switch it's nowhere near as good as it used to be. DK Summit. This is another track that I would have given a 5-star rating to if we were rating the Wii version of the track, but unfortunately in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, DK Summit gets a 4-star rating. DK Summit hasn't been downgraded that severely like Koopa Cape, but I don't find it to be as fun of a course to race on in Mario Kart 8 compared to Mario Kart Wii. I think the big reason for this is how the course heavily relies on the use of half pipes, and while I liked the gimmick of the half pipes back in the Wii version, using them in Mario Kart 8 feels kind of janky. Two small changes have been made to this map compared to the Wii version which I think are worth mentioning. The first change I don't like, which is quite nitpicky to be honest, is that in the Wii version, the track would start out all foggy, and as you race down the mountain, the weather would slowly change from foggy to sunlight. Here in Mario Kart 8, it's always sunny and there's no fog, and I kind of miss that dynamic weather element of the track. One good change though is that they changed the statue at the start of the track from a Mario one to a Donkey Kong one, which makes a lot more sense. One other reason for DK Summit not quite making it to a 5-star rating is that in Mario Kart 8, its closest comparison is Mount Wario, another track where you race down a snowy mountain that is leagues above DK Summit in every possible way. We will talk about Mount Wario later on, but due to that track being in the same selection of tracks as DK Summit, when given a choice between which snow mountain track to race on, Mount Wario is the far superior option here. DK Summit stands out far less in Mario Kart 8, which is why I'm giving it a 4-star rating in this game. But do you want to know what tracks did get a 5-star rating and which tracks I think are the best in Mario Kart 8? Well, one of them is Sunshine Airport. Time to talk about some of the best tracks within the game. This course takes place at an airport, and damn, what a good idea this was for a track. You drive through an airport, avoid shipping crates while racing on the runways, go under or through planes, you take off into the air with planes flying beside you, and then finally you fly back down into the airport back straight into the terminal. The creativity on display here is out in full force, and there are lots of little details and secrets hidden around this map too, which just makes this track so fun to race on. I would never have expected a Mario Kart track themed around an airport to be this good, but it really is one of the best. Excite Bike Arena. This track is one simple loop around a stadium with plenty of ramps on the road for you to perform tricks on. What's unique about this course is those ramps I just mentioned are actually randomly placed, meaning if you were to race on this course a second time, the ramps would be in completely different positions. There are also mud spots and speed boost jumps scattered around the track too, which also get randomly generated each time you play on this track. This is a really cool feature which makes for a completely different play experience every time you race within this arena. I also love how this track is a huge callback to the Excite Bike series, which is an old and forgotten Nintendo series. It's a very cool thing to see, and I hope to see more Mario Kart tracks do this in the future. Ribbon Ribbon Road. If I had to give out an award for the Mario Kart 8 track with the best glow up, then Ribbon Road would easily be our winner. For this race, you have been shrunken down and been put into a kid's bedroom filled with presents, ribbons, and all sorts of toys. You race along a road made of ribbon, and you get to have a tour of this kid's bedroom. The course is really colourful and fun to race on, but the theming is what makes me completely adore this track. Baby Park. I can already feel the hatred coming towards me for having this track ranked so high up on this list, but I don't care as I love this track. Baby Park is a simple loop you race around 7 times and that's it. What makes me love this track though is the true chaotic nature of it. Everyone is squished together on this map and items are flying all over the place. But let me tell you, if you don't find that chaotic, then wait till you experience racing on this track online with 12 players at 200cc. This is probably the most chaotic you can get in this game, and it's for that reason why whenever Baby Park comes up as a choice online, I'm always going to pick it. Some people see this as 7 laps of hell, but only the elite understand how this is Mario Kart in its true chaotic form. Rosalina's Ice World. A track themed around Rosalina where you race on an icy planet. The race starts off with you taking a very difficult and narrow turn across the ice, then you will make it to this water section where you can either race on top of the ice or go underwater to find some penguins swimming about. You then go through some ice caverns where you can find some shortcuts to take to complete the lap. I do have to say that this does feel more like a Mario Galaxy themed map than a Rosalina one, but I still love all the Mario Galaxy references on this course. There's the Comet Observatory right at the start line, lots of little huts and spaceships on this ice planet, and if you look up into the night sky, you can see other galaxies you can visit within the Mario Galaxy games. Tick Tock Clock. This track has always been one of my favourites. I love that we have a course themed around that clock world in Mario 64. We got clock hands, gears, pendulums, and plenty of other clockwork machinery. Damn it. Daisy Cruiser. One of the best tracks from Double Dash that was also featured in Mario Kart 7, and it's a track I was very happy to see return again within the Booster Course Pass. The new Mario Kart 8 version of this track retains most of the changes made within Mario Kart 7, such as an additional route added to the left of the boat and some underwater sections. Daisy Cruiser in Mario Kart 8 does add some extra details to the course though, such as Goombas which can be found chilling in the swimming pool, and the dining room area inside the ship has had a massive makeover. It looks so much better now, especially compared to the original GameCube version. These are very small changes, but they help to add an extra layer of polish to this already great map. Waluigi Pinball, a fan favourite track from Mario Kart DS and one of my favourites within Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The theming is excellent with lots of neon and saturated colours used to make this course pop, and this is a really fun track to race on. A nice small detail here as well is that most of the sound effects unique to this course have been brought back as well, such as the item pickup noise, the sound effect for hitting booster pads, and for when progressing onto the second lap. I do wish some anti-gravity sections would have been implemented into this course, but Waluigi Pinball in my eyes still remains as an excellent track. DK Mountain. This is my favourite track from Mario Kart Double Dash, so I was very happy when this course was announced to be returning in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This track feels just as fun to play on as it was back on the GameCube and Wii, and visually it looks fantastic on the Switch. Lots of the tracks on the Booster Course Pass have received some criticism over how they look, but DK Mountain is a beautiful track. The textures on this map are really detailed, especially that gravel texture on the mountain, and the colours are way more saturated, making this map pop a lot more compared to the GameCube and Wii versions. Good stuff, and I'm just happy this track made the cut and was able to return in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Squeaky Clean Sprint. Similar to Ribbon Road, this is another track where you have been shrunken down drastically and been put into a miniaturized environment. This time, the environment you are racing in is a bathroom, and on this course, you race into a sink, dive into a bathtub, get sucked down into a drain, and at one point, you can even fly over a toilet and can use the water sprouting out from the toilet to gain a boost of height and take an alternative path. Speaking of alternative paths, there are a lot of these to find on this course. Most of these can be found towards the end of a lap, but there's also one where you can land onto some sponges when jumping into the bathtub, and you can take a shortcut by racing under the engagement ring, and you get a double item box for doing this. This is one of the most creative tracks in the game. It is literally dripping with charm. Also, shout out to the rubber ducky with the Mario hat on. Electrodrome. Now this feels like a Mario Kart track built specifically for me. Taking place in a nightclub filled with bright neon lights, massive speakers, giant disco balls. I just want to go to this nightclub immediately. It's a good track to race on too, as most of the course is an anti-grav, which is always a fun time, and there's a pretty extensive split pathway in the middle of the track. Also, which pathway you take determines which effects are applied to the background music. And speaking speaking of the music, we have to talk about it for this course, as oh my god, it's such a banger. It's an electronic song which is right up my street, and literally everyone is raving to it. The Koopa Troopers, the Shy Guys, the Parada Plants, they all love it, and I love it too. Rainbow Road Wii, the final track from the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass, and let's be honest, this was the perfect way to end off this DLC. A lot of people claim this to be their favourite Rainbow Road in the series, and this is probably the most challenging Rainbow Road track. It's a lot easier now to race on, partly because the Switch's controls are much easier than the Wii's, but it's mainly because I'm now a 21-year-old and not 7. I love this track though, and was so happy to see it close off the Booster Course Pass DLC. Ninja Hideaway. The first thing I want to say about this track is that the amount of verticality here is ridiculous. Most of the time when racing on this course, you could choose to take an upper path or a lower one. I tend to take the upper path since that feels like the faster one, and if you fall off the upper path, you fall straight back onto the lower path and just keep going. There is also a gliding section in the middle of the course where you can try to catch the updraft coming from some bamboo shoots, and hitting the updraft will boost you up incredibly high back onto the upper path. I absolutely love the verticality this track offers, and that's not all I love about it, as there are so many other cool sections within this track. Dodging all the shurikens taped to the ceiling, driving through the sewers, finding the secret shortcut that takes you to the gliding section in a quicker time, and there are many cool parts of this course I really like. The design of this course is phenomenal. The Ninja Dojo theme and aesthetic are excellent, and this is one of the best tracks to come out of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass. Coconut Mall. One of the most iconic tracks and a fan favourite track across the Mario Kart series. You race through a shopping mall while listening to some banging music. There are quite a lot of big changes to the course here compared to the original Wii version. Starting with the changes that I like, the metal parts of the track which you would race through have been stripped out and replaced with nice green carpets and walls that fit a shopping mall aesthetic much better. And now moving on to the changes which I dislike. The escalators are different. They no longer look like actual escalators you would find in a mall. They are instead just ramps with green and red arrows. The Miis and the cars at the end of the course have been replaced with Shy Guys, and the movement of the cars have changed too. Originally, when this course first came to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the cars would not move at all, instead of driving from side to side across the track like in the Wii version. Not a good change that anybody liked. Thankfully, Nintendo did address this complaint and gave the Shy Guys some money in order for them to afford some gas for their cars. And now the Shy Guys perform donuts in their cars instead, which is, to be fair, much better than the cars just being stationary, but I still miss the original movement patterns of the cars. In my opinion, this version of the track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe feels much weaker when compared to the original Wii version. However, despite all the changes that have been made to the course, which I don't like, at the end of the day, it's still Coconut Mall. This is still one of my favourite tracks from across the whole series, and while the Mario Kart 8 version of this track is not as good as the Wii original, this is still easily a 5-star track, and it remains one of my favourite Mario Kart tracks of all time. Maple Treeway. Kicking off the top 10 tracks at the number 10 position, Maple Treeway is one of my favourite Wii tracks, and thankfully, Mario Kart 8 has not downgraded this map in any shape or form, unlike some of the other Wii tracks that have been brought over to Switch. The cannon shot at the start of the track is still here, the wigglers at the top of the tree, and even the half pipes remain intact. The theming of this map is also so pretty. I love all the orangey autumn colours that have been used. It makes me feel all nice, warm and cosy when racing on this course. Peach Gardens. Out of all the tracks in the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass, Peach Gardens was one of the best tracks that was brought back into Mario Kart 8. This track was already fantastic, but it got a huge new upgrade, as on the final lap, you are actually directed onto a different path and you end up racing around the track in reverse. And while racing on the final lap, you will come across a new glider section where you can fly through the gardens and high-five Luigi, which is rad as flip. This was already a fan favourite map, but it has been made even better in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Singapore Speedway. If you told me that a Tour City track would have made it to the number 8 spot on my list, back when we only had Wave 1 of the Booster Course Pass be released, I would have laughed in your face and called you a huge bozo. But Singapore Speedway is not just the best city tour track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it's one of the best tracks within the game, period. And if you need some convincing as to why it is, well, you start the track by shooting yourself out of a cannon onto a rooftop pool, then you'll be gliding down from the rooftop across this football field. You will then take another ramp to glide through these rainbow waterfalls, you land onto this cool conveyor belt section, and then finally you take a huge jump over the city and glide through some air booster rings. This course is insane. The art direction for this map is also incredible, with all the bright neon colours, and shout out to the music here as it goes hard. When I was saying earlier with Tokyo Blur that the good tour city tracks make me want to go visit the city in real life, well, Singapore Speedway actually makes me want to go visit Singapore in real life. I never expected to rank a tour city track so high up in this list, but Singapore Speedway is a masterpiece. Rainbow Road N64. If I had to choose one word to describe this Rainbow Road, then I would choose the word celebration. The track has this beautiful golden colour to it, there are fireworks everywhere, and there's golden trains with the toads on it will throw coins at you. This is just a magical recreation of the original N64 Rainbow Road track, and thank God they changed this track to being one giant lap with checkpoints. This track used to be way too long back on the N64. But yeah, like I said earlier, this course just feels like a true celebration of the Mario Kart series. Hyrule Circuit. Of course I'm going to have a Zelda themed map so high up on my list. You drive through Hyrule Field and then enter Hyrule Castle where you will find the Master Sword. You can actually interact with the Master Sword too by hitting these 3 crystals, which will activate a ramp that allows you to jump to the Master Sword and perform a trick off it. The coins have also been changed to rupees on this map, and the enemies have been reskinned to look like Zelda enemies. I love these small changes as it makes you realise that the devs were fully committed to making a great Zelda track. Animal Crossing. As you have probably already guessed, this is a track based off the Animal Crossing series. You race through a little town, go through a small forest, drive along a beach, it's all charming stuff. This track's unique gimmick though is that there are 4 different versions of this course that correspond to the different seasons: spring, summer, autumn and winter. Not much changes between each version except for the visuals, but it's a feature of this course which I really like. The coins for this course have also been swapped out for bells, which is a nice touch, and this is just a really cute little course to race on. This track, along with Hyrule Circuit, makes me want more Nintendo IPs to cross over with the Mario Kart series, as both of these tracks are fantastic. Yoshi's Island. One of the best tracks to come out of the Mario Kart Booster Course Pass, and one of the best tracks in Mario Kart 8. A track inspired by the Yoshi's Island series, with there being many elements present here within those games. You have unique enemies, the Yoshi's Island music, the coins for this map are Yoshi coins, and the results music for this track is stage clear music from Yoshi's Island. All these aspects make this track feel entirely unique compared to the rest of the courses in the game. There is also a secret shortcut you can activate by colliding with this question cloud in the sky. Colliding with the cloud creates an alternative path in the air you can take, a really cool mechanic that no other Mario Kart track has in it. I did not expect the Booster Course Pass DLC to spit out one of the best tracks in Mario Kart history, but damn, Yoshi's Island is an amazing track and one of the best in the series. Rainbow Road 3DS. I was so happy this course made it into the DLC, as in my opinion this is the best Rainbow Road in the series. You race around planets, bounce on a space mushroom, go onto the rings of Saturn, traverse onto the moon, go through a rainbow tunnel and glide through some star rings. There is so much going on in this course, it's ridiculous. This is also another one of the courses where it's just one giant lap with several checkpoints, and that feature works great for this Rainbow Road as each lap feels different and totally unique. It feels truly magical racing on this Rainbow Road, which is why I think it's the best Rainbow Road in the series, and why it has made it to the number 3 spot on my list. Big Blue. Coming in at the number 2 spot is the second of the F-Zero maps in this game, and playing on this track is just a blast. Like Mute City, this track is purely about speed. There's boost panels everywhere, conveyor belts on the road, and even jet streams of water you can ride. You feel like you're going at top speed constantly, and that's one of the many reasons why this is a brilliant track. Another reason why is because this is one of the courses where it's just one giant lap with checkpoints, and so each lap feels entirely unique. Course layout wise, it's very windy with lots of tight turns, and there's a lot of anti-gravity sections here too. The anti-gravity is used really effectively here, as at one point you are racing on the course where the water is above you, which is really trippy, but it's sick. The music here is banging too, and let me tell you, you have to experience this course on 200cc. This is probably the best track to play on 200cc within this game. Big Blue is basically Mute City, but on steroids. I love this track. This was really close to being ranked number 1 on my list too, as I kept going back and forth whether it should be this track or the other track we have left to rank. And speaking of that track, it's finally time. We have so far ranked 95 of the tracks, and we have finally made it to the last track. So without further ado, the best track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is Mount Wario. Where do I even begin? Mount Wario is a flawless Mario Kart track. You start the race at the top of a huge snowy mountain, which I assume belongs to Wario, and you simply have to make your way down to the bottom. But the journey you take to get down this mountain is something special. You start by launching yourself out of a helicopter onto the snowy peaks of this mountain. You will race along some icy cliffs till you reach this dark cave filled with water. Then you will drive on the side of a dam and make your way into a forest with branching pathways. These pathways all lead to a ski slope where you'll find flag posts on the slopes to drift between, and finally you will end up at a ski jump that you have to launch yourself off to reach the finish line. I mean, this whole track is just incredible. If I had to describe this track in a single word, it's a masterpiece. I don't know how they are going to make a track better than this in the next Mario Kart game. Well, that's it. I can't quite believe it. But that's all 96 tracks ranked in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And you know what? There was not a single track in this game that was themed around Luigi. What the fuck? Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this big chunky video. I've got videos on the channel ranking tracks from the other Mario Kart games, including Mario Kart Double Dash, so check those videos out if you are interested. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Nintendo themed videos from me in the future, including me ranking all the Mario Kart Wii and 3DS tracks. But first, before I get round to making those videos, I'm tired from making this hour-long video. It's nap time for me. Good night.